There are some games that I will return to over and over again. Some during times of great stress, and it's a nice relief. Some because I enjoy the world so much and I want to re-experience it. Some because I only ever played it as a kid and I want to see if it's as good as I remember. And then there's one that I replay anytime I feel like I have an enormous task ahead of me. That I replay when life is being very daunting. That I play when I'm feeling down on myself and need to prove that I can take the next step no matter how hard it is. I have played Celeste 3 times. The first time was during the pandemic. I had just moved to a scary new place and pursuing a career that is damn near impossible to pursue successfully, and COVID separated me from any easy means of seeing everyone I've ever known and loved who all now lived 900 miles away. I needed to prove to myself that I could do something difficult. So I decided to climb a mountain. The second time was a few years later, when I moved back to my home state. No matter how justified the return in my head was, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had run home with my tail between my legs. A failure. I needed to prove to myself that even though I had fallen some heights, it was still possible to pick myself back up, dust myself off, and tell myself that I wasn't useless. So I decided to climb a mountain. The third time was for this video. 2 of those 3 times were when I was at a particularly low point in my life, but I would argue all 3 were at significant times in my life. Times of great stress, turmoil, and transformation where I need to give myself a pep talk and to tell myself that I can do whatever I put my mind to, no matter the obstacle. Playing through Celeste makes me feel better as a person, and very few games can claim to do that. Though I will admit that I am breaking some rules here. Granted, the rules are stupid, arbitrary rules that I placed upon myself, but I have a lot of those, and the knowledge that it's stupid and in my own head doesn't make the fact that I broke those rules hurt any less. 'Cause, you see, I told myself that I wouldn't do a review of any game that was in my top 20 list. At least, not until after I believed that my channel had reached a point that I felt my videos were of a high enough quality to be worthy of being associated with those games. Wait. Shit, I already did a review of Saints Row 2. Fuck. I didn't make that rule up until after I made that video. Phew. I didn't break any self-imposed and imaginary rules. I was worried my brain was going to kill me there for a second. I also told myself that I would not make a video talking about one of my favorite games of all time until I had at least 1,000 subscribers. At the time of writing this, my sub count is 934. So I'm making a video about one of my top 20 favorite games while I'm still just an amateur, and what I will say by the end of it will almost certainly make me lose subs rather than gain any. But screw you, my brain. I can make whatever kind of videos I want. It's my channel. Yeah, take that, me. The player character of this game is named Madeline, though you are free to rename her anything you want. Not a lot of people know this about me, but one of my favorite genres of video games is side-scrolling platformers. I think it's the simplicity of it. It's a viscerally satisfying game loop. You avoid enemies and jump over pits. You either make the jump, or you don't. It's also the genre that has caused me to break the most number of controllers in my life. But, I mean, come on, when have those 2 facts ever been mutually exclusive for people who play video games? Celeste is a legendarily difficult platformer, but it's not difficult because of jank or because it takes you unawares. Celeste is a profoundly, fairly designed game. From the moment you enter almost every new challenge screen, you are shown your obstacles, and it's up to you to figure out how to get past them and then to execute those solutions. And like so many great games before it, it does a wonderful job of introducing the mechanics of the game in a manageable area and lets you get the hang of them before it starts to mix it up and truly challenge you. The controls are simple. You can jump, you can dash once in any direction, and you can climb. You cannot dash again until you've landed on safe ground, and you only have a certain amount of stamina before you start sliding down the walls you're trying to climb. The challenge comes from how the environment utilizes these simple controls. Every level introduces a new type of obstacle, such as surfaces you can't walk on twice, wind that you have to resist, feathers that let you temporarily fly, crystals that rejuvenate your dash, and stamina mid-jump. I could go on, but you get it. From these simple controls come so many possibilities to make you turn how you've been moving up to this point upside down. You have to keep your mind quick and your thumbs quicker, and I do mean that quite literally. I sometimes have to go days between play sessions because how much this game makes my thumbs hurt. And I mean that as a genuine compliment in case that wasn't clear. This game's mechanics get two callous thumbs way up. The one real complaint I have about the core gameplay is, well, look, not to get all "it's not me, it's the controller's fault" on you, but a vast majority of the deaths I had were because I dashed in the wrong direction even though I wanted to go in a different one. That's where most of your broken controllers will come from. They will come from dying repeatedly because the character on the screen did not explicitly do what you were intending to do. So, yes, you will die. You'll die a lot. But like so many other games of its nature, one of the things that I appreciate about the frequency of death is how quickly you are brought back to the beginning of the room. So you can keep your momentum going and try again as soon as you fail. The game is telling you, repeatedly, just because you failed once does not mean you should give up. Get back up off the mat. Try again. And for people who want an extra challenge because the base game is, for some reason, not enough for you, the game provides. Throughout the levels are floating strawberries. They are either in incredibly difficult to reach places or hidden away inside rooms or sneaky breakaway walls. And to be clear, the strawberries don't actually do anything. The end of the game keeps score of how many you collected, and that determines how good the strawberry pie you bake at the end is. But that is quite literally it. Your opinion on how much that's worth may vary. For people who want an even bigger challenge than that, also hidden throughout the levels are B-side tapes that, after clearing the level, allow you to take on an even harder version of that level. And for people who want an even bigger challenge than that, what the fuck is wrong with you? But for you, there are also C-side tapes hidden within the B-side levels that offer you an even more insanely difficult challenge. As if that wasn't enough, also hidden throughout each level is a crystal heart. After you have rolled credits, an additional chapter opens up, as well as a free DLC final chapter to continue challenging yourself. Every A, B, and C side level has a crystal heart, and in order to progress through these additional chapters, you must use these hearts as keys to unlock them. I will be 100% honest with you. I have never completed any of these things. I have never even gotten past a single B side, and I most definitely have not played Chapter 8 or 9, the latter of which is described as the longest and hardest level in the entire game. Sorry if that's a disappointment to the audience who, as far as I can tell, is composed entirely of people who were just clicking on videos at random. But I haven't finished them for a few reasons. Number one, I am not, nor have I ever been, a 100% completionist. The number of platinum trophies on my PS5 is a piddly number. I did get some of the crystal hearts required to open up the first part of Chapter 8, but that was because I accidentally stumbled upon one, so I pulled up a guide to find more just for fun. Number 2, I am not a masochist. Okay, well, not when it comes to video games anyway. And while I adore this game with all of my heart, I feel like playing such teeth-sandingly difficult levels will eventually make me hate it, and I don't want to hate one of my favorite games. I know, imagine. And finally, the story has such a satisfying ending that tacking on anything more than that afterwards, I don't know, it just kind of feels excessive. Which honestly is my problem with most post-game DLC. Maybe one day I'll make a video where I discuss that in more detail. Hint, hint, subscribe, hint. Because the story of this game is incredibly moving and beautiful. The gameplay in Celeste is near perfect, but it's the story and characters that make me keep coming back repeatedly and puts it firmly in my top 20 games of all time. Please go play this game if you haven't already, because I am about to go into detail about the story and how it spoke to my soul. Celeste is the story of a girl named Madeline, or whatever you choose to name her, who has taken it upon herself to climb to the top of Mount Celeste. Why? Because she needs to prove to herself that she can. During her climb, she meets a young man named Theo, an amateur photographer and social media expert who is wandering and trying to find more of a purpose in his life. I need you all to understand something about Theo before moving forward, okay? I need you to know that I would kill and die for this man. Madeline falls asleep during her climb and experiences a dream in which a part of her escapes from a mirror. The fan community for this game calls her Badeline, but saying that out loud just made me taste blood, so I won't be calling her that. This part of her begins to berate her and tell Madeline that she doesn't have it within her to get all the way to the top. When Madeline doesn't agree, the part of her chases her. Also during this conversation, she pops out of her character portrait, and that will never not be creepy to me. After her nightmare, she stumbles upon an abandoned mountain resort. Well, mostly abandoned. The resort's original owner, Mr. Oshiro, still haunts the place. The hotel is filled with manifestations of Oshiro's insecurities and regrets, which makes it an actively hostile environment. You can tell because I'd say this level is the first real difficulty spike. Every challenge up to this point has to do with how you interact with the environment. Every death has been because you fucked up. But with the dark clouds shifting around, it feels more like the area itself is actively trying to make you fail. Yes, I know, it's still up to you to do the correct timing of the jumps, but that doesn't change the fact that these mother-humping little black blots are trying to fuck with me. And then, you get to the end of the level where Oshiro is definitely trying to fuck with you. I like how Celeste handles most of its boss fights. Every antagonistic force we've had to deal with up to this point has been something that Madeline has just run away from, to mirror how she's climbing this mountain to run away from her problems, and her aversion to any sort of direct confrontation, be that internal, part of her, or external, Mr. Oshiro. The game actually does a lot of subtle things like that. Like, for instance, at first, you'd probably wonder how the hell Theo is constantly able to catch up to you, until you realize that every time Theo makes an appearance, he has just arrived from a completely different route, implying that either A, Theo's a lot more badass than we are giving him credit for, or B, Madeline is taking the harder, more brutal path and Theo is taking the much easier one, which both seem like something these two characters would do. Speaking of Theo, we will be spending the next little while of the game with him. He helps us work our way through a panic attack, helps us explore some ruins, gets captured by nightmare beasts, and has to live through a manifestation of his insecurities by having a bunch of lifeless eyes staring at him while he's trapped in an unbreakable prison of his own making. You know, typical bestie stuff. And while I am glad that it's not just us that is having to contend with our own reflections of our psyche, Theo's bubble does make him the focal point of a lot of my frustrations with this level. Probably one of the most annoying parts of the game. Never, and I do mean never, has there ever been a good escort quest in a video game. If you think you know of an example of a good one, you are wrong. The fact that we are escorting one of the most charming motherfuckers on the planet does not help that. Once you drag Theo out of the ruins, the two of you have a sit-down chat at a fire. I really, really like these moments where you can just sit, take a breath, and chat. The whole game doesn't have to be thumb-ruiningly tense. You and Theo chat about a lot of things. You chat about his sister. You chat about the part of you, their reasons for climbing the mountain, and Madeline's depression. I appreciate their openness in talking about the subject, though I will say that her definition of what she goes through is different from mine. She says it feels like being at the bottom of the ocean. She can't see anything and she feels claustrophobic, yet exposed at the same time. Whereas mine... Okay, this is going to be a weird comparison. But you know that part in Yu-Gi-Oh! Follow me on this, I swear I'm going somewhere. You know that part in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where Mai duels Merrick and loses and he traps her in a nightmare where she's trapped in an hourglass? She's banging on the glass and shouting for her friends to come to her rescue, but not only can they not hear her, they're also clearly having way more fun without her, and all the while the hourglass is filling up with sand around her until she gets to a point where she can barely breathe and gives up all hope. Yeah, that. Later that night, after the campfire chat, Madeline enters into another dreamscape so she can talk to the part of her and inform her that, oh, don't worry, I don't need you anymore. I'm gonna move past you. I'm stronger without you. You can go now. Part of her obviously doesn't take kindly to that and throws Madeline to the bottom of the mountain. After picking herself up and allowing herself to indulge in a pity party, she decides to confront that part of her. She accepts the fact that while that part of her may have been going about it in an unnecessarily confrontational way, it was trying to protect her from getting hurt. And she could have done more to actually communicate with that side of her rather than just straight up suppressing it. So, now it's time to go communicate the crap out of her. I like that this boss fight is different from the others. Whereas all the other encounters in the game focus on you avoiding and running away from danger and confrontation, this one has you moving towards it. Because moving forwards is the only way to improve. Moving forwards is the only way to be the person you want to be. Moving forwards is how you get shit done, and I've got a fucking mountain to climb! Most emotional double jump ever. Now, I believe I said something about climbing up a fucking mountain. After literally leaving her baggage behind, we begin what I can only describe as the platonic ideal of a final level. Every part of this stage uses mechanics that you've honed in every previous level. The closer you get to the top, the more the two parts of you reflect on your journey so far and how far you've come, and the more they talk about how they'll be able to make it to the top, you start to believe them. You can do this. You can do this. You can fucking do this! When you reach the final screen, I genuinely adore the spyglass that lets you see the top. It's like the game itself is telling you, you got this, buddy, keep going! As I was reaching the top and realized that I was going to have me getting to the summit recorded for the first time, I had the thought, hey, you know what would be really embarrassing, right? Anyway, you finally reach the top and... God, I don't think there will ever be a time in which I don't just linger here at the peak. When I reach the end, I just feel like I've accomplished so much. Like I could accomplish anything. Reflecting on this experience and how beautiful the narrative is, it genuinely brings tears to my eyes. The first time I played this game, I felt better as, like, a person. The story of Madeline rejecting her other half as something that needed to be pushed down and avoided, and then coming to accept it as a necessary part of her that can help drive her forward, and the two of them becoming stronger for it, was a narrative that spoke me on innumerable levels. I adopted a similar mentality during my college years to help me get through some of the hardest times of my life. If you want to hear more about that, check out my video about Riku from Kingdom Hearts. When I did get to this peak the first time, it was during the height of the pandemic. I had moved 900 miles away from everyone I'd known and loved, gotten beaten down onto the mat when I tried my best to pursue my dream of being a voice actor, and every single time I got back up, I got kneed in the face and slammed back onto the mat again. But this game genuinely made me feel like I could do anything. Due to various circumstances, which I won't get into, though most of which are financial, I decided to move back to Indiana so that I could be closer to my friends and family. After 3 years living in Dallas, I realized how much I needed them in my life. And I know that I made the right choice. I made the safe choice. But that didn't mean that I didn't feel like I was running home with my tail between my legs. Like I wasn't strong enough to pursue my dreams and happiness. I was in a very big funk. And I've been in a lot of funks. I know my funks. This was one of the worst I had ever had, which was roughly around the time that I played Celeste for the second time. Playing through it again was comforting. Climbing to the top of the mountain made me feel like I wasn't completely useless, that I could still accomplish something, that I wasn't just a failure. I was thrown to the bottom of the mountain, but that did not mean that I couldn't eventually climb my way back up. It also helped that we were able to buy a new couch. I had a great couch for years, but it couldn't fit through my front entryway. And I don't know if you've ever had to live for an extended period of time without furniture, but it is genuinely demoralizing in a way I cannot adequately describe. So, yeah, Celeste and the couch, mostly. But while all of that was going on, there was another mountain that loomed nearby that I was aware of, but didn't feel ready to fully tackle yet. A year or two earlier, I had taken smaller steps to try and climb that mountain, and with the publishing of this video, I am almost at its peak. So if you will indulge me for just a little longer, let me tell you about my third and most recent playthrough, and why I'm making this video now. I'm trans. Yeah, in my first draft I had a whole big hullabaloo where I beat around the bush for an annoyingly long time, but the short version is, I'm trans. I go by Kenzie now, and I'm rebranding my channel from Mac the Meh to Kenzie Frenzie, which you probably already figured out by clicking on this video. And judging by several of the comments I got on my Saints Row 2 video, I can imagine that this fact alone will cause my subscriber count to plummet. But what can you do? I always try my best to bring my most authentic self to my videos, and if I put this aspect of myself hidden away, I would be doing you, my audience, and quite frankly, more importantly, myself, a disservice. As a general rule, I stay away from all fandoms. And I do mean all fandoms. They are all awful without exception. If you can think of a good, wholesome fandom, you are either not looking hard enough or it hasn't soured yet. So, that's why I managed to avoid interacting with Celeste fans for the longest time. It wasn't until I started spending time in trans online circles that I found out that Celeste is a beloved game in the trans community. I didn't realize that so many players took away from it being a trans allegory. Nor did I know the lead designer of the game was a trans woman, or that she saw the game as representative of her own journey. I didn't realize that the main character is a trans woman. I didn't know any of this when I played this game all those years ago. So, I had two reasons for wanting to make this video. One, because I wanted to update my channel and I am nothing if not an extra bitch that doesn't know the meaning of the phrase half-assing it. And two, I wanted to play the game with the context of a trans narrative in mind to see if playing it really will spontaneously turn my walls pink, white, and blue. And honestly, not really. I think one of the things that makes this game so beautiful is that it is such a universal story with a message that is brilliantly told and we all can relate to in some way. The fact that the main character is trans isn't explicitly hinted at until the very end of one of those stupidly difficult extra chapters we talked about earlier. I think it's wonderful that this game meant so much to such a large group and that I count myself amongst their number. But the fact is that this game spoke to me before I even started questioning my gender. And to be clear, whether it is a trans narrative or not is not a point in its favor or against it. I think it has something to offer all audiences. If you've ever felt like you had a part of yourself that you were constantly at odds with, if you have ever found yourself falling after reaching new heights, if you've ever tried to do something just to prove to yourself that you can, or if you're looking to do that, if you've ever wanted to go the longest way around to bake a delicious strawberry pie, Celeste is a mountain that is worth climbing. You will have a lot of sore thumbs and a lot of shouted profanities, but if you take your time and stick to it, I promise, the view is worth it.